I'm Teresa Coraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today, for Mother's Day, I'm giving myself permission as a Mother's Day present to talk about my hopes and dreams. And I'm doing that in the form of 5 feminine economies. What is a feminine economy? The way that I define it, it's one that puts the happiness of families and children at the center in a way that doesn't take that away from anyone else. And so when I look at how do we have feminine economies, they're ones in which we support the communities that then support families, and that's how we measure, are these working or not? Where else to start but with the purpose of life? I believe the purpose of life, in its most elemental, is to care for the people and the places that have been entrusted to us. That may seem like it's an easy thing, but in reality, trying to do that in a way that doesn't take the same thing away from any other family is not just difficult, it is completely and utterly impossible. And I could go into great detail about how that's true and go and walk you through your day-to-day life and show you how many things you depend on that are not possible to have without taking them away from someone who's getting nothing back from you. But I want to keep this positive. And so I'm looking at a responsibility movement. And I've talked about that in terms of health and in terms of taking responsibility for our own happiness. But in order to do this, we have to be within a system that's enabling that. We have no chance whatsoever if we're relying on our money, for instance, rather than relying on our labor and access to resources. The first feminine economy is a subsistence economy in which we take responsibility for providing our own food. I picture this as something that could be really fun, that I think you could have neighborhoods in which you have collectively some plot of land that's outside the city that belongs to your block. And then a couple days a week, you'll take a little bus out there and you'll spend the day maybe listening to some interesting kind of podcast and being directed by someone who really knows what they're doing. And you might be doing farming, you might be doing animal husbandry, but you'll be taking care of the land in a way that is connected with other people. And then some of you will be in the meantime cooking, and you'll be preparing this lunch meal in which everyone gets together and talks about maybe whatever it was that you were listening to on your podcast. So it could be a way that has kids involved with it, that has people who are really knowledgeable about these things, so that we have the ability to learn and to get together and be doing something productive and building our bonds with each other in that way. The second feminine economy is one of reciprocity, and that's what I write about primarily in my book, How to Dismantle an Empire. It uses the mortgage as the intergenerational transfer of wealth, something that conveys a debt to be able to live in a house and get an education that another generation provided to you. You need to repay that debt by making sure that generation can live out their lives in comfort and dignity, and to pass on the gift in a better form to the next generation. So what my program does is it promotes the transfer of local goods and services in a way that distributes that as widely as possible, that makes it where you have choices. It's a system of anarchy because you as an individual are able to choose what you want to do with that within the parameters of the things that it promotes. And I look at 4 different things that I focus on, which is local food and well care, which includes child care, elder care, homeopathy, anything that is something that will make you feel better. And then the third is education, and the fourth is home improvement. So these are things that would foster us taking care of each other and also taking care of the infrastructure and the properties that we are able to reclaim from the hedge funds through my program. One of my focuses is that people can work where they live and live where they work. I look at 2 things that I try to discourage. One is extraction, and the other is concentration. So there are a lot of things to be worked out with that, but it could be a lot of fun. It could be something that really gives us a choice in terms of being able to live in a way that supports our community and knowing that we're going to be able to make a living that is equal to the cost of housing in our area. The third feminine economy is something I call edu-travel. And if you've seen my episode on reinventing education, you know that I think that education is wasted on the young. It's something that I believe should be lifelong, and that at different levels, you should earn your ability to be able to have more choices in terms of what you learn. And that you also are going to be learning by teaching, and that those are 2 things that go hand in hand, that everyone can learn and everyone can teach. So in my system, you might have a couple months every year that you go and travel somewhere else and you get to be with other people who share the same passions that you do. And you may have some hosting that you do in your community for different concentrations of ideas that you want to enjoy together. And people can host in their home. And in my system, I have a protectionist system in which local goods and services are given more value. That you, if you are working there, are earning money that I call carrots, that then you can use that may have twice the value or more of whatever imperial currency is being brought in from the outside. And so instead, if you had, say, sibling cities with this educational system, you could trade at an even pace. So you could make sure that you could go to Guatemala and study something, and someone from there could come to your city. You could have deals with places all over the world where it's special to you. It's not just any city. And instead of, as I do every year, raising a new crop of college sophomores, I could instead have actual families who come to visit and to be my neighbor for a couple of months, and that those could be incorporated and I can learn from them what's happening in their communities. The fourth feminine economy that I think would be so fun is one that involves hosting. So, as I've mentioned before, I have been working for 7 years on turning my childhood home into an Airbnb. And this was something that gave me something to work on during the time that my mom was alone, that she moved into assisted living and then into a skilled nursing facility. So it gave me a project so that I could be there and be close to her. And it was a restoration that was very cathartic to take this shoebox of a house and turn it into what I'm now calling the art house. So I will link this on the Substack, but if you go to Airbnb and look for Cumberland, Maryland, and look for the art house, you'll see this little project of mine. What has made me think that it would be such a joy is if you could have travel vouchers that you get for other people who stay, or to do peer-to-peer car rentals, as I do now through Turo, or if you're giving rides to people and doing something like Lyft or Uber. And all of these things, I believe, should be owned by the community. None of them should be corporate, and especially not things like our communication networks like Nextdoor. All of these need to be owned by the community. So if you're doing these things, maybe you're doing a little once a week restaurant out of your home, that you are earning these things that you can either cash out at not their full value, and otherwise you can just use them as travel vouchers to go anywhere else and be able to enjoy that same benefit of staying with people who are also taking responsibility for making these places beautiful and welcoming in other people who feel the same way. And the last feminine economy is a gift economy for those things that can be infinitely replicated. So all different art forms, all writing, I think that these should be things that no one does all the time. Within this economy, within this system of economies, you can still feed yourself. You can still make a living and be able to afford the place that you live and the services that you need by doing relatively mundane things for your neighbors, for other people in your community. And those things that take time are things where we should be expecting reciprocity. But then there are the things that we are born for, the things that are special to us, that gift that we want to give to the rest of the world. And I think that that should always be something that is a gift and that gives away, that people have to thank you for that. If that was done through a system where maybe you're getting things from other places, and again, you can either cash them out at half the value, or you can keep them in that community so that at some time you may want to travel there. You may want to appreciate all of the things that that community has been doing and also bring yourself to them. And another part of the gift economy, I think, should be open source software, so that all of the different means that we have of being online together are things that we can add to, and that there are modules that we can take and plug into our neighborhood system, so that if you want to have, say, a tool shed and have a library that's distributed among different houses, that there are ways that someone can design it and that can be shared with everyone, and that we can thank people for that by sharing things from our own community. Those are my hopes and dreams for Mother's Day, and I hope that you will dream with me and start fleshing out these dreams and turning them into practical ones, of saying, okay, if the genie in the bottle gives us one choice for system change, and we're able to own our own labor, our own cities, our own infrastructure, our own land as communities, what do we want to do with it? To follow this up, here is reinventing education and also the carrot system that goes more into how we can take something that works within a family and expand it to a community. Thank you for watching.